Hi, this is Tim of the 1916 Company. Welcome and thanks for logging on. If you love this watch, email me, tmosso at the1916company.com for purchase, pricing, and availability questions regarding this watch. And today we're discussing a Rolex Certified Pre-Owned Oyster Perpetual GMT-Master. This is what might be called a transitional reference, launched in the early 80s, discontinued in 88. It is the 16750. So from 1981 to 1988, this model right here represented both the past and the present of the GMT-Master. So it embodied new features such as, for example, a quick set date and a 100-meter water-resistant case, a true 40-millimeter size, and yet it was also a GMT-Master, meaning it has two hands, one in 12-hour sweeps, one in 24-hour sweeps, but they're mechanically geared together, so the second time zone is still calculated with the bezel, and we still have a plexiglass crystal, perforated lugs, and a hollow link bracelet. So back in the 1980s, this was sort of a glimpse of where Rolex was going while still having one foot anchored in its heritage. Now, the first thing you can see right here is that, of course, this is not an original tritium dial. It is a Rolex factory dial, but it is a Luminova dial. So just in case you were wondering about that, this one is what I call a really nice daily driver. So the timepiece is 40 millimeters in diameter. This is the 16750. It's a watch that is 13 millimeters thick. It's a little bit thicker than a modern GMT because you can see that dramatically vaulted and boxed plexiglass. It is 47.5 from lug to lug. It's got a 20 millimeter spacing between the lugs. Now, this is an 8.9 million serial number. So approximately 1986, right at the end of 1986 is when this would have been made. And you can see that the watch features a dial with applique indices rather than printed and a gloss base that would have been consistent with a very late 16750, one made right at the end of 86 through the beginning of 88. They would have had these applique gloss dials. Prior to that, they would have been printed and matte. And we're going to throw it on my wrist, which is 16 centimeters in circumference, and the watch wears nicely. It definitely has that distinctive vintage Rolex rattle because of the construction of the bracelet. Now, the bracelet's in excellent shape. It's a J code, so J codes to about 1985, and the bracelet, of course, is a 78360 with 580 end pieces. It's nicely preserved. It's a great period piece, and because it doesn't have solid end links or a super case as later GMTs would, this one wears really well on a smaller wrist. I could actually recommend this wholeheartedly for him or for her. For him or for her, a unisex watch, a really great way to get into a vintage timepiece with no questions about whether or not it's going to fit. Now, it'll easily slide underneath a dress cuff, even with the outcropping of the bezel. It's flat enough, that won't be an issue. And I think this watch is also a wonderful vintage experience without any of the compromises that come with vintage. So, for example, the bracelet is straight enough and solid enough that I did have to check the clasp code because I thought Rolex might have included a new bracelet with it at the time it went in for its CPO certification and service. But no, this is a period bracelet. It's just really well preserved. Now, we have pivoted end links because that's how they used to do it. And you can see that the case has not been over polished. We're not going to grind it down to a toothpick for the sake of making it shiny or unmarred. So you can see that the lugs are still quite full from side to side, and we don't have any protuberance of spring bars out of the lugs. You can also see that the break between polish and satin is quite clear and that the lugs aren't deformed or excessively dented or damaged in any regard. The bracelet tapers down towards the end. You can see the outer faces are polished. We've got screw-fixed removable links. We have quite a few divots drilled inside the clasp to allow you to use your spring bar tool to change the anchoring point of the bracelet, which is going to give you the ability to fine-tune the fit. Now, you can see that the definition on the clasp is still quite crisp, and it may indeed be that at some point in the CPO process, a new clasp body was included. But when you take a look at the clasp internal, and we'll demonstrate that now, you can see quite clearly that this was a J series, so it's period stamped. And then, of course, when it closes, it's simply friction fit. That's how they used to do it. That's how it is here. So the watch has a screw-down crown. It's trip lock and, or pardon me, it is a twin lock crown and 100-meter water-resistant case. So 100 meters was a big step up for the GMT, and that's when the GMT really became a no-holds-barred all-terrain watch where you could swim with it with very little concern. We have the bezel that is bidirectional rotating, and of course the way this works, if you want to read two different time zones, this is very similar to the original GMT Master launched in 1954. So you set the watch to Greenwich Mean Time. So that 24-hour hand is going to be Greenwich Mean Time. The idea originally was that this would be for Pan Am pilots who'd be able to calculate the time at their destination airport. And the way you do that is, well, you set the 24-hour hand to Greenwich Mean Time. It, in turn, is geared to the 12-hour hand. So you're going to be on GMT. And then you offset using the GMT plus or minus offset of your destination airport. So if it is GMT minus, you turn it clockwise. If it's GMT plus, you turn it counterclockwise. And then assuming that 24-hour hand is set to GMT, once you apply the offset, you look at the bezel adjacent to the hand. Now you can see what time it is at the destination. Of course, this was a step forward in Rolex dial quality with the combination of the gloss base and the applique indices. Hands and indices, they're white gold. The idea was that these would not tarnish or oxidize. One quirky feature of these 5-digit GMT-Masters, so the 16750 and the 16700, these have an unusual combination of hacking seconds and a traditional quick set date. So you normally don't think of a modern GMT as having a quick set date, and certainly the 1675 4 digits did not. So you had this interesting window during the 80s and 90s when there was a traditional GMT Master that was not a true double time zone, and it had a quick set rather than that second time zone. It also has hacking seconds. The movement inside is known as the 3075. It's a 27 jewel automatic winder with bidirectional winding action. It's got approximately a 48-hour power reserve. It's got a COSC chronometer certification as a movement with 5-position adjustment. It is a free-sprung balance for more precise adjustment and shock resistance. It uses an overcoil hairspring for isochronous operation in every orientation with respect to gravity. And this was the introduction of 4 Hz beat rates to the GMT Master collection, so potentially even a little bit more resistant to shock and oscillation-induced timing deviation, and a little bit more accurate, again, potentially. And you can see on the reverse, people always ask, what does the back look like? That's what the back looks like. So this is a lovely watch that is described as transitional by Rolex collectors, and a really nice example. Now, of course, there has been some refinishing. There are some marks on the lugs. It is not absolutely immaculate, and it has had a Rolex factory service replacement dial for Luminova. And I'll demonstrate that once more for those of you who may have just skipped to the end. So this is not an original tritium dial, but this is a beautifully preserved watch with a Rolex certification, which comes with a 2-year pre-owned warranty and, of course, authentication already performed by Rolex itself. So reach out to Team Mosso at the1916company.com for purchase and pricing details. Rolex Certified Pre-Owned watches are backed and authenticated by Rolex. Should any reconditioning be necessary, it will be to a Rolex Certified standard, and any parts invested, Rolex Factory Original. Should the initial retail box, paper, and accessory set still accompany the watch, it will be included with the sale. But no matter what, a certified pre-owned box and paper set starts with an outer box, a leatherette travel pouch with suede lining, a warranty card that embodies the 2-year globally valid Rolex-backed warranty. Note, this is not a retail warranty, but backed by Rolex and actionable at any of its authorized points of sales and service. A leatherette wallet includes the warranty terms and conditions manual. A holographic hang tag marks this as a certified pre-owned Rolex watch, and a manual details Rolex's values as a company, the certified pre-owned program, care, feeding, service, and use of your Rolex, locations of points of sales and service, and details of Rolex.com. Rolex certified pre-owned watches are backed only by Rolex.